She walked into the lobby of her own luxury hotel and was told to leave. No reservation, no recognition, no respect. To them, she was just another black woman out of place, maybe lost, lying. But what they didn't know was that she owned the building, signed their paychecks, and controlled their future. And she didn't come here to argue. She came to teach a lesson they'd never forget. One call, one moment, and everything flipped. But what happens when the real power walks in? Quietly? Stay with this story until the end, because this isn't just about one hotel or one mistake. It's about every time someone has ever been judged by how they looked, instead of who they are. And by the time you reach the final scene, you'll understand exactly why they regretted it. And she will never have to prove herself again. Camille J. Reynolds didn't look like a billionaire, and that was the point. Dressed in black leggings, a slate-gray hoodie, and Nike sneakers still dusty from her morning hike, she stepped into the lobby of the Skylark Regency, a hotel she'd built from scratch a decade ago. This was her crown jewel, a 5-star urban sanctuary in the heart of downtown Denver. She hadn't planned to be here, but after canceling a red-eye flight and needing rest before a surprise board audit, this was the safest place to crash. Except that the reception she received made it clear. The staff didn't recognize her. The lobby was buzzing. Business travelers moved in and out. Bellhops wheeled gold carts, and light jazz spilled from the piano bar. Camille walked up to the front desk. No fanfare, no security detail, no assistant trailing her. Just her and a simple black backpack. The woman behind the desk, whose name tag read Trina, barely glanced up. "Yes?" she asked flatly. "I'd like to check in," Camille said warmly. "Reynolds! Camille!" Trina clicked around on her screen, chewing gum and tapping one long nail. Then she shook her head. "I don't see a reservation under that name." "That's okay," Camille said. "There's a permanent suite blocked under executive ownership. Should be suite 1402. Trina blinked and let out a small laugh. Yeah, no. That suite's only used by VIPs. You need a reservation to stay here. We're full tonight." Camille raised an eyebrow. "You're at full capacity?" "Yes, ma'am. Guests only." The phrase hit like a slap, not because she was surprised, but because of how casually it was delivered, like she didn't matter. Camille didn't argue. She didn't pull out her wallet. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she smiled. "I see," she said calmly. "Is your general manager in?" Trina looked like Camille had asked to speak to the president. "He's busy. I can leave a message." "That's all right," Camille interrupted softly. She pulled out her phone and dialed. She didn't even step away. One ring. Two. "Janine, it's Camille," she said. "Yes, I'm downstairs in Denver. Apparently, I'm not allowed to check into my own hotel. I'd like it handled immediately." She hung up and waited. No drama, no escalation, just patience. Trina leaned toward her coworker, whispering with a smirk. "She says she owns the place." Camille stood off to the side, looking out the lobby windows, letting it all unfold. Within 3 minutes, chaos began. The guest manager, front office lead, and assistant GM all spilled out from the back office, eyes wide, voices suddenly hushed. Phones rang, walkies crackled. One by one, faces changed color. Trina's smirk faded fast. That's when the general manager himself, Richard Lowell, emerged. Face pale, tie crooked, eyes scanning the lobby like someone had pulled the fire alarm. He spotted Camille and froze. Her arms were crossed, her posture unshaken. "Miss Reynolds," he breathed, I didn't know you were coming." Clearly, Camille replied. The room went silent. She wasn't just checking in. She was checking who actually belonged. Camille didn't move. She didn't need to. Richard Lowell scrambled forward, practically knocking over a stand of fresh-pressed juices meant for elite guests. "Please accept my apologies," he said quickly, sweating through his collar. "Had we known—" "You didn't need to know," Camille cut in, cool and even. "That's the point." Trina stepped back, fidgeting with her blazer, eyes darting to her computer, then to Camille, then back. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Richard tried again. "We'll get you into Suite 1402 right away. I'll have your key personally delivered." "No need," Camille replied. "I'll take it now." He motioned to Trina, who stood frozen. "Give her the key." Trina opened her mouth, then closed it. She unlocked the system, her hands trembling. When she placed the key card on the counter, she wouldn't meet Camille's gaze. Camille didn't pick it up just yet. Instead, she turned to Richard. "I assume you're familiar with my philosophy on service?" "Of course," he stammered. "Then explain what went wrong tonight, in your own words." Richard gulped. "We failed to recognize one of our most important guests." Camille tilted her head. You failed to respect someone you assumed didn't matter. That's more dangerous than a missed reservation." No one dared speak. Across the lobby, a family paused mid-check-in. A man in a suit stepped aside to listen. Whispers spread. "You've all had the training," Camille continued, now speaking to the small crowd of staff gathering near the front. "You've heard the stories, watched the videos, but apparently it didn't stick." She looked directly at Trina. "What was it? The hoodie? The skin color? The fact I didn't show up with a driver and a briefcase?" Trina's voice was a squeak. "I just thought—" Camille held up a hand. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to ask a better question. One that I want everyone to answer before the night ends." She looked around the room, eyes sweeping over every face. "What does power look like to you?" Silence. Then she turned back to Trina. "Because if you think it always walks in wearing heels and a pantsuit, you're going to keep making this mistake. And next time, it won't be me standing here. It'll be a guest who doesn't have the power to push back." Richard stepped forward. "Ms. Reynolds, I take full responsibility." "You will," she said, "because this is bigger than a mix-up. This is about culture, about perception, about bias, and I don't fix those things with speeches." Camille finally picked up the keycard, tucked it into her pocket, and turned toward the elevator. "Oh, and Richard?" "Yes, ma'am?" "Clear your morning." She didn't explain why. She didn't need to. Because tomorrow, this hotel would learn exactly what it meant to serve everyone, especially the ones they didn't see coming. At exactly 8 a.m. the next morning, the conference room on the second floor of the Skylark Regency was transformed from a planning hub into a courtroom. Camille sat at the head of the long walnut table, not in designer heels or a flashy suit, but in her signature style, calm, collected, dressed in a crisp navy blazer and white tee. Her presence alone carried more weight than any title. On her left sat Tony Bradford, her chief of operations, flown in from L.A. overnight. On her right is Julian Marks, head of HR compliance. Their expressions made it clear this wasn't a talking to. This was an intervention. Trina sat at the far end of the table. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, her lips pressed thin. She wasn't smirking anymore. Richard Lowell was beside her, stiff as a statue, a legal pad in front of him, but nothing written on it. Other department heads, housekeeping, security, concierge, filed in one by one, eyes down. Camille tapped a pen against the folder in front of her. This isn't about embarrassment, she began. It's about exposure. She flipped open the file. Inside were photos, guest reviews, internal memos, some glowing, some not. Skylark Denver has the highest turnover rate of any property in our portfolio, Camille said flatly. Guest satisfaction scores are middling. And internal culture reports? Below brand standard. Richard swallowed hard. Last night wasn't a fluke, Tony said, her voice sharp. It was a symptom. Camille turned to Trina. You're not the villain here. You're the example of what happens when training is memorized, not internalized. Trina finally spoke. I didn't mean to be rude. I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the problem, Camille replied. You treated me differently because you thought I was no one. Would you have done the same to a white man in a suit? Trina looked like she wanted to say yes, but the room was too honest for lies now. No, she whispered. Camille nodded. Thank you. She stood and walked to the large digital screen behind her. A presentation appeared with one click. Slide 1. What power doesn't always look like. Photos filled the screen. Women in scrubs, men in hoodies, brown skin, curly hair, tattoos, fat, disabled, non-binary, no makeup, no badge. We live in a world where people still associate leadership with whiteness, with masculinity, with affluence. That's how people like me end up being dismissed in our own buildings. Her voice didn't rise, but it landed like thunder. So, she continued, we're starting over. Julian slid a stack of printed packets across the table. Effective immediately. Mandatory retraining for all guest-facing staff. 2 weeks. Live scenario testing. Bias response drills. And one-on-one interviews with HR. Camille paused. And Richard, you'll be stepping down as general manager for the time being. Richard's eyes widened. Temporarily. Pending review, Camille said, and whether you're willing to learn. Trina's eyes welled with tears. Am I fired? No, Camille replied. You're lucky. You get to grow. Because growth, she believed, was the only real apology. 2 weeks later, the Skylark Regency felt different. Guests walked in and were greeted with real smiles, not robotic scripts. The concierge remembered names. The barista learned regulars' orders. And, most importantly, the staff had stopped assuming who looked like they belonged. Camille returned, unannounced. This time, she wore no blazer, no jewelry, just jeans, a cardigan, and a messy bun. She walked up to the front desk, quietly observing. A new receptionist stood behind the counter, a young man named Devon, who looked up with a genuine smile. Welcome to the Skylark. How can I help you today? Camille smiled. Checking in. Reynolds. Camille. Devon typed for a moment, then his eyes lit up. Ah, yes. You're in our owner's suite. We've got you set up with fresh eucalyptus linens, ginger tea, and extra chargers. Do you need help with your bags? She grinned. No, thank you. But that was perfect. As she took the key, a familiar voice approached from the side hallway. Ms. Reynolds? It was Trina, no longer in front desk attire but dressed in corporate gray. A little older in the eyes, a little steadier. Camille turned. Good to see you, Trina. I've completed the full training, she said quickly, and Julian asked me to assist with the next onboarding group. Camille raised an eyebrow. And what did you learn? Trina didn't hesitate. That respect isn't earned by appearance, it's owed by default, and that if I ever forget that again, I don't deserve to work here. Camille nodded once. That was enough. She turned toward the elevator, but Trina called out one more time. Also, I wanted to thank you. Camille turned back. You didn't shame me. You taught me. And I'll never forget that. This time, Camille's smile softened. Just pass it forward. Upstairs, The suite was immaculate. Fresh flowers, a handwritten card, a small book titled Invisible No More. Stories of Black women in leadership rested on the side table, wrapped in a skylark bow. She sat on the bed and exhaled. She didn't do this for revenge. She did it to change the culture, to force people to see what they refused to acknowledge. Because the question wasn't, how did this happen? It was a question of, why does this keep happening? And she was done letting it slide. As Camille stood to leave for her board meeting, now not just a surprise appearance, but a mission, she looked in the mirror. She saw power. Not because of her wealth, but because she knew exactly who she was. And no one could take that from her again. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel invisible, you are not alone. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks in wearing sneakers, speaks with grace, and teaches by example. If this story spoke to you, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Because we're telling stories that matter, stories that reflect real strength, and the people who refuse to be ignored.